Previously, we saw the beginning of the end, a god's obsession, a great work doomed to collapse under its own unholy ambition. But what happens when a spell designed to rewrite death itself doesn't fail quietly? Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into the Soul Wars, where death is not an end, but a weapon. This is the aftermath of hubris. This is the echo of a god's scream cast across realms. Nagash's great spell did not simply fizzle out, it detonated. What followed was not just disaster, it was the Shyish Necroquake, a cosmic eruption of death magic that shattered the boundary between worlds. Tombs split, graves vomited corpses, spirits clawed into existence, and in every realm, across every horizon, the dead began to rise. This is not resurrection, it is retribution. This is the Soul Wars. The excess death mana he could not consume burst in a shockwave of death magic that spread like a spectral tide, rippling outward across all of Shyish, and then surging into the void between realms. This convulsion of necromancy, later called the Shyish Necroquake, was a calamity on a multiversal scale. Like an unseen tsunami, the wave of amethyst death energy crashed into every one of the mortal realms. Wherever it passed, the veil between life and death was rent asunder. Across myriad lands, the dead suddenly clawed their way out of graves by the thousands, then millions, then trillions. In an instant, tombs shuddered open, and skeletal warriors stood upright. Long dead ancestors stirred from dusty crypts, and anguished spirits coalesced into phantasmal forms. From Shyish to Azir, from the highest peaks of Hysh to the blood-soaked plains of Gur, the Necroquake's influence forced the deceased back into grotesque unlife, hungry for the warmth of the living. The living reeled under this onslaught from beyond the grave. In the first moments of the Necroquake, cities fell to sudden undead uprisings. Quiet graveyards became slaughterhouses as corpses rose to devour the living. Lands that had known peace were overrun overnight by their own dead. Villages strangled by creeping hordes of zombies. Castles besieged by the spirits of long-dead armies. Elemental energies were thrown into turmoil as well. Magic itself went wild. The Necroquake shook the balance of the winds of magic, unleashing freakish arcane phenomena. Wizards found their spells suddenly mutating or growing uncontrollable. The air brimmed with endless spells, rogue sorceries given predatory life by Nagash's broken ritual. Coalesced shards of magic, burning comets, swarming sanguine torrents, predatory jaws of shadow, roamed the realms, indiscriminately wreaking havoc until dissipated or bound. In Ekshi, elemental fire spirits raged out of control. In Gairan, twisted growths of undead flora sprouted from once verdant soil. Even ancient god beasts stirred fitfully in their slumber, disturbed by the deathly convulsions. For Nagash, the outcome was a mix of triumph and frustration. The Necroquake had not gone exactly to plan. Chaos's meddling had corrupted his great spell. Yet, in some ways, the results exceeded his darkest hopes. Though the explosion temporarily dispersed Nagash's physical form, forcing the great necromancer to slowly reconstitute his essence in the aftermath, he had succeeded in one dreadful aim. No soul could now escape his grasp. The inverted magic of Shyish began pulling at all souls of the dead, drawing them inexorably toward the Shyish Nadir, the hungry vortex now devouring the underworlds of the realm. And with the undead legions swelling beyond count, Nagash saw his opportunity to commence a war of vengeance upon the living. As his spirit recoalesced, Nagash exulted in the new age he had wrought. To his dread servants, he proclaimed that the time had come to reassert his dominion. This realm is mine. Sigmar might be the stars, but I am the darkness that stretches between them. Thus began the Soul Wars, Nagash's bid to conquer all the mortal realms and scour them of life. The first and most harrowing blows of the Soul Wars came from Nagash's newly awakened armies of the dead. The Necroquake's surging energies tore open the underworlds of Shyish, and from those lightless depths a ghostly host poured forth. Nagash's malice gave form to the Nighthaunt, an entire legion of nightmares made fleshless flesh, spectral armies of chain-draped wraiths and shrieking banshees. No longer were these spirits content to haunt lonely tombs or barrow mounds. At their head, Nagash installed a new infernal lieutenant, Lady Olynder, the Mortarch of Grief, a once-cursed spirit whom he raised to divinity and charged with leading his Nighthaunt processions. Clad in tattered bridal veils and weeping endless tears of sorrow, Olynder embodied despair itself. Despair weaponized. With a whispered command from Nagash, she unleashed the Nighthaunt like a plague of ghosts across the realms. Lady Olynder leads the Nighthaunt processions, an eternal storm of souls damned by grief and vengeance. The night of specters fell without warning. From the dark skies rained phantasmal forms, flickering emerald phantoms and pale corpse lights, as Nighthaunt armies manifested in city streets and above fortress walls. In every mortal realm, major settlements of the living found themselves under siege by the dead. The Supreme Lord of the Undead had decreed that no sanctuary would be spared. Every great city of order was to be punished for defying his claim on souls. And so, the Nightmare Wars began. In Ekshi's fiery plains, ghostly knights galloped through the ember-lit night, their scythes reaping terrified settlers. In the jungles of Gairan, curses of undeath spread like blight, whole enclaves strangled by ghostly vines and vengeful spirits of the forest's victims. In Shamon's glittering metropolises, incorporeal hordes drifted through walls to massacre nobles in their bedchambers. Perhaps worst of all was the assault on Glimsforge, a free city in Shyish itself, long a bastion of light in the realm of death. There, Lady Olynder's personal legion of grief descended upon the city in force, determined to annihilate this shining foothold of Sigmar in Nagash's domain. This siege of Glimsforge saw endless ranks of geists and wraiths batter the enchanted gates, while Nighthaunt knights, led by treacherous undead champions, the Knights of Shrouds, fallen heroes who had bargained their souls to the Lord of Death, assailed the walls from within. Though the Stormcast Eternal's garrison fought valiantly and ultimately held the city, the lands around Glimsforge were left a corrupted wasteland, heavy with an eternal funeral gloom. And Glimsforge was but one battle among countless. All across the realms, civilization tottered under the dead's onslaught. The Nighthaunt were a terrifying new foe, unlike any the mortal realms had seen. They were fear and misery incarnate, predatory ghosts driven by hatred for the living. Many were cursed souls, condemned at the moment of death, and now unleashed to inflict their torment on others. Olynder's spirit legions moved like a cold wind, intangible and relentless. No fortress wall could stay them, for they slipped through cracks and keyholes as if carried by a deathly breeze. And with every life they took, Nagash's power grew. Fresh souls of the slain were instantly dragged down into Shyish to swell the ranks of death. Panic and despair spread in the living like a plague. The mortal realms seemed poised to become an empire of ghosts. But Sigmar, God King of Azir, would not let his people be snuffed out so easily. The forces of order marshaled what strength they could in this dark hour, preparing to strike back against the tide of undeath. The God King's response to the Lord of Death's necromantic revolution was as swift as a thunderbolt. From Azir, Sigmar unleashed a new ordained fury upon the forces of death. The sealed Sacrosanct chambers of his Stormcast Eternals were finally opened. These were the Stormcast's warrior mystics, chamber militant and arcane, warrior priests, knight incantors, and astral templars who had long studied the arts of magic. Until now, they had been held in reserve. But with ghosts overrunning the realms, and Nagash's sorcery threatening the souls of even Sigmar's immortal warriors, the Lord Arcanums and their Sacrosanct hosts rode to war on bolts of celestial lightning. The Resurrection Crusade began. Sigmar charged his Lord Arcanums with leading 55 Sacrosanct chambers into the realm of death and beyond, to reclaim the lands lost to undeath, and to find a way to heal the spiritual flaw afflicting the Stormcast's own souls. For the Stormcast Eternals suffered a dire problem of their own. Each time these immortal warriors fall in battle, their soul is recalled to Azir in a flash of lightning, to be reforged into a new body. But over time, this miracle of reforging revealed a tragic cost. Each rebirth strips away a sliver of the warrior's memories, emotions, and humanity. Many Stormcasts had begun to lose themselves, becoming distant, wrathful echoes of who they once were. Now, in the wake of the Necroquake, that process was under even greater threat. Nagash's expanding deathly influence occasionally snatched Stormcast souls before they could return to Azir, imprisoning them in undeath. The Soul Wars thus carried a personal horror for Sigmar's champions, the very real fear of true death or corruption. With grim resolve, the Sacrosanct Stormcasts entered the fray, bearing enchanted war gear and Sigmarite lightning forged to combat ethereal foes. Evocators wielded crackling storm staves that could channel Azirite lightning into the spirit world. Night incantors intoned binding spells to shackle unruly endless spells and banish the restless dead. These warrior mages were the tip of Sigmar's spear in the Soul Wars, and wherever they marched, the night was rent by thunder and holy light. One of the most renowned counteroffensives came as Sigmar's forces sought to relieve besieged cities like Glimsforge. Lord Arcanum Balthus Aram of the Anvils of the Heldenhammer led a cohort of Sacrosanct Stormcasts to cleanse the lands around Glimsforge, and Lord Celestant Ferris Thom, the city's stalwart guardian, battled within the 10,000 tombs beneath the city, hoping to deny Nagash the countless souls interred there. In a desperate clash under the haunted streets, Ferris met a fate ominous for all Stormcast Eternals. Nagash's agents succeeded in corrupting the reforging process, siphoning away Ferris's soul as he fell. His essence was drawn into the great necromancer's grasp. Though Ferris's comrades ultimately saved Glimsforge from total ruin, the loss of even one soul to Nagash was a knife in Sigmar's heart. It proved that Azir's gates were no longer completely safe from death's touch. The Anvil of Apotheosis itself, the divine forge where Stormcasts are reborn, shuddered under Nagash's curse. Sigmar's wrath was said to be terrifying to behold as lightning storms raged above Azirheim in reflection of his fury and sorrow. Still, the Stormcasts fought on with unwavering determination. Their resurrection crusades carved a path of hope through the darkness. In Shyish, the Sacrosanct Chamber of the Hallowed Knights reclaimed cursed mausoleums and consecrated them anew in Sigmar's name. The Celestial Vindicators stormed the haunted swamps of All Hallows to rescue imprisoned mortal refugees. There were even unlikely alliances. In the free city of Lethis on Shyish's coast, the living and the dead temporarily united against a greater threat. When the Nighthaunt besieged Lethis, seeking an artifact in Sigmar's storm vault beneath the city, Stormcasts, Free Guild soldiers, and even a crazed court of flesh-eater ghouls fought shoulder to shoulder to deny Nagash his prize. The Celestant Prime, Sigmar's celestial herald, descended from the heavens at the height of this siege of sorrow to personally smite Lady Olynder and her lieutenants, shattering the Legion of Grief's onslaught. Though the victory came at great cost, and Nagash succeeded in wresting the prisoned soul he sought. The long-lost General Orpheon Catacros was freed from the Midnight Tomb beneath Lethis, rising to become Nagash's newest Mordarch. The defense of Lethis proved that Nagash's armies were not unstoppable. The living still had teeth and hammers of their own. And so, from the heart of the Midnight Tomb, Orpheon Catacros returned to the mortal realms. Not as the hero he once was, but as the newest Mortarch, bound in bone and undeath. Lethus endured. The living had proved their worth, but the cost was staggering, and the war had only just begun. From here, the Soul Wars would spread like wildfire across the realms. Order, death, even chaos would soon be drawn into the storm. This was just the opening act. Next time, the realm war expands. Chaos answers. Join us. Subscribe, like, and stay close. The next soul claimed might be your own.